Hey guys, it's the first week of October, and you know what that means. It's Beast Wars Week. Yep, Beast Wars Week was in no way a spur-of-the-moment joke intended as a one-off, just because I happened to have 3 videos of Beast Wars content lined up to make. And there is absolutely no way that this will be the last Beast Wars Week ever, because I've run out of material to base these videos on, as that will never happen until the day I die. Anyways, I think this year I'm going to start off Beast Wars Week by reviewing the first season of the show, and I really hope this motivates you to go out and watch it yourselves. Something that actually blew me away in my early YouTube days is when I did the truck does not equal monkey video. I didn't actually think there would be that many people who didn't realize the concepts I was explaining in that one. I thought that for the most part, I was just making that video to satisfy my own sanity, and that people who didn't understand that Optimus Prime and Optimus Primal were not the same character were just pretending to not know that. So, color me shocked when over the last 2 years since I made that video, at least 16 people have come forward to me and thanked me for making that one because it shattered their preconceived notions and caused them to watch the show, which they now loved because almost anyone who watches Beast Wars loves it. I never actually thought that it was that misunderstood. So, I hope that with this video, I will be able to convince yet more of you to give the best piece of media Transformers, and hell, even Hasbro has ever produced, a shot. But I've given enough of my thoughts away for this review a little early, haven't I? So before we start on the review of Season 1, let me do a little primer to get you up to speed, as I'm sure that plenty of you have never seen that truck does not equal monkey video. Beast Wars is a direct sequel to G1, set billions of years in the future. The commonly stated official time in media outside the show is actually only 300 years, but that literally doesn't make any sense, because 300 years is like the blink of an eye to a Cybertronian, and almost everything from G1 has passed into myth by the time Beast Wars comes around. So either everyone instantly died as soon as the last episode of The Rebirth rolled around, or everyone got Alzheimer's if the 300-year date is correct. No, Beast Wars is set billions of years later, and it follows the descendants of the Cybertronian War. Optimus Primal is a military officer whose body is based on Optimus Prime, because it's basically a uniform. A commander is an Optimus. Megatron was a guy either named Gnashteeth or Galavar depending on the source you read, and he changed his name to Megatron because Megatron was the greatest Cybertronian conqueror. Beast Wars Megs had a bit of an ego, and he took that name because he wanted to make everyone else forget that other guy and only remember him as the greatest conqueror. And to be clear, the whole turning into animals thing is something that only the characters we see in the show do. Everyone else on Cybertron still turns into vehicles. And even the characters in the show did too before coming to the planet featured in the series. They take pretender animal forms because there is a radiation on the planet that will destroy their robot bodies if they're exposed to it for too long. However, the radiation can't pass through the organic materials of their pretender shells. So hopefully that dispels a lot of the preconceived notions that you may have about this series, and hopefully it wasn't too boring as a rehash of one of my older videos for my fans. Anyways, now I can actually review Beast Wars Season 1, and first up, before we get any further, shut up! No, shut up! Stop complaining about the animation. Anytime someone mentions Beast Wars, animation bad, barf. And maybe it's the degree I have in CGI animation talking, but no, you're wrong. I am not even going to make the argument that the animation for Beast Wars was revolutionary for the time, which it absolutely was. Instead, I'm going to point at every last CGI animated Transformers show that came after and laugh. You think that this looks better? First up, let's look at Energon and Cybertron, where everything is shit and everything is stiff. Beast Wars came out 10 years prior, where tons of the technology didn't exist yet, and the animators for the show had to invent it themselves, like CGI fog. Beast Wars came up with that. And yet, there is no competition. It's not even close. Beast Wars crushes them. And then someone is going to point out Prime and the War for Cybertron. And those are even newer series with a bit more money thrown at the animation budget. But I want to show you something. When was the last time you saw limbs get blown off live in a Transformer show? Megatron gets run through with a piece of rebar in the War for Cybertron, and what does it look like? A flat pink texture on top of his body. And in Prime, you can get shot square in the chest by Megatron's fusion cannon, and all that happens is, oh god, my shoulder really hurts. Meanwhile, in Beast Wars, if someone gets injured, it shows on their bodies. Limbs get ripped off, holes get punched through, surfaces get burned, body parts deform. Oh, but tell me about how bad the graphics are. Look, I'm going to be honest. Beast Wars Season 1 does have the roughest graphics of the entire show because they spent all of their money making the character models twice. Originally, Hasbro wanted the show to look exactly like the toys. They got most of the way through development by the time that Mainframe Entertainment convinced Hasbro that it looked awful. So they had to spend a huge amount of their budget and time, literally millions of dollars, remaking the models for the characters so they looked good. As a result, there was very little left for the backgrounds and environments of the show. And that's really kind of the key thing. The models and animation of the show are impeccable to this very day, for the most part. There are times when stuff gets unparented or the parenting just gets fucked up, or every now and then it becomes very clear that they ran out of time or budget, so they didn't animate a sword fight with sword-wielding wrists, but for the most part, all of that holds up. No, it's the environments that the characters are in that's a punch to the face. Those are very clearly the cheap parts of the show. And, to be fair, early on, they do look pretty awful. I myself find it charming because that's what old video games and shows tended to look like around that era, but it is the ugliest part of the series. And I'm going to say again, just get over it. I have shown this show to dozens of people over the years, and everyone complains about the way the show looks for the first episode. And I've tested this every time. By the third episode, I asked them how they feel about it, and they have, without fail, 100% of the time responded, I don't even notice anymore. Believe me, if you give the show a try, you will get over the animation in no time. You don't even have to attempt to do it. It will fade into the back of your mind because even if it is bad, the writing and the story are that good. And I suppose now it's time to actually talk about the content of the show and stop trying to convince you to just give the damn thing a chance. Beast Wars has quite possibly the best opening 2 minutes of any show I've ever seen. You are confused to what you are looking at for about 8 seconds, and then the show explodes into the absolutely killer score of Beast Wars when 2 ships bust out of a portal mid-space battle. You are 8 seconds in, and it's already an action scene. Even G1 took 50 seconds to get to that. What follows is perhaps the most effective use of exposition I've ever seen. I could teach an entire college course on this exposition sequence. In literally 26 words, they impart who the Maximals are fighting, that they are chasing them, why they are alone, why they won't be getting backup, and why they are losing. And it flows as 100% natural dialogue. These are just things that normal, reasonable people would be saying to each other in this situation in this exact way. The scene goes on to establish Dinobot's naked aggression, Megatron's sadism and flair for the dramatic, why the stasis pods are in orbit, and just how they end up crashing on the planet, using only 54 more words total, spread across a half-dozen characters, mid-battle, during a killer song. With this grand total of 80 words across 2 minutes, the entire foundation is imparted to the audience during an action scene, and it's all handled so efficiently, the audience doesn't even realize that just happened. They now understand the show implicitly, and at no point did they get grabbed by the collar and have to be told, hey, this is what's going on. Pay attention so you aren't left behind. This is a masterful start to the show, and every time I rewatch this series, I am in awe of just how well crafted this introduction is. It is so good that I've had to spend the last 262 words explaining what 80 words meant. Summarizing it is less efficient than watching the scene, and that's just how the show starts. And then look at the impact of the 2 ships when they crash. I love this little detail. You can see the moment they collide, and then several seconds later, the shockwave runs across the camera. And by the subsequent shots, you can tell which crash was which, as the Maximal ship came in at an angle skittering across the ground, and the Pred ship made a straight impact that buckled the ground beneath them. That's all such lovely attention to detail. Sorry if I'm all over the place this video. Considering only like 6 of my well over 300 videos I've ever produced were show reviews, I don't exactly have a defined format to help me make this all intelligible. But looking at the rest of the show, the strongest suit it has is its characters, which early on were the weakest they ever would be. Going back through the show's earliest episodes, it's pretty clear that the writers did not fully yet understand the characters they were creating. Dinobot very specifically stands out like a sore thumb, as while I didn't notice this as a child, he's definitely a lot more malicious and evil than he's meant to be later on. Sure, he's supposed to be a bad guy aligned with the good guys out of convenience, but he's a warrior with an honor code. So it's very odd that early on, his honor really only seems to extend to a direct blade-on-blade fight with him specifically. He is fully happy to lie, manipulate, and sacrifice his allies at the drop of a hat if he thinks it would benefit him, which, as he is characterized later throughout the show, would just be stuff that he'd never do, even at his worst. Rat Trap is also a lot more of a malicious malcontent, and I have seen that put multiple people all the way off of him to the point where they hate his guts all the way to the end of the show. I don't know if it's just the fact that I owned a lot of pet rats growing up, or whether or not I was just not smart enough yet to notice, but as a kid, his antics didn't really frustrate me like they do as an adult. So I find myself having more tolerance for him than most people I've run into. Outside of that, the hardest part of the show to suffer through is Cheetor's constant use of 90s catchphrases. That is truly the cringiest part of the series for everyone watching today. But these for the most part are flaws that the show quickly moves past. I'd say that by episode 10, Dinobot has matured into the character we more recognize now, the flawed but redeemable ex-Predacon who struggles with violent urges and an all-consuming desire to win. Rat Trap stops flagrantly defying orders just to see Optimus cry, and Cheetor, well, you can't win them all, I suppose. But the character dynamics of the series are so good. The funny thing about Beast Wars is that while in G1 everyone is friends, here in this series, no one really seems to like each other all that much. Optimus has a pretty insubordinate crew, which is understandable. He's a military officer trying to lead a team of civilian scientists, workers, criminals, engineers, demolitionists, and saboteurs, none of which want to be here fighting this fight and following his orders. Rhinox is the only person happy getting in line, but Cheetor is a fucking moron, Rat Trap has open contempt for authority, Dinobot is a borderline berserker who just wants them to run in and start killing people till they're dead, Tigatron is a filthy hippie, and Megatron isn't exactly doing any better, because just about the only person on his side who wouldn't be happy to shoot him in the back and take command is Scorponok, the moron, and later Inferno, the psychopath. Waspinator doesn't seem to have any ambitions like that, but at the same time, he'd probably be very happy to get rid of the person who's constantly ordering him into combat zones where he gets blown up. So character interaction in this show tends to be a lot more nuanced and complex than leader tells someone to go do the thing, and then the other person does the thing because they were told to. There's more animosity between most of the good guys than there was between Megatron and Starscream in G1, and the bad guys are a whole mess of their own. The first season does something that I also kind of miss a lot in TV. It's episodic, with most of the show being standalone. There's a main plot to follow, but it only rears its head in individual chapters every now and then. I, for one, loved this kind of storytelling and wish it was more prevalent again, because I find that it tends to explore the characters a lot better than most serialized series, since it shows them reacting to a variety of unrelated situations. This really gives you a sense for who they are and how they might resolve just about any ordeal they come across. As a kid, Beast Wars was just so mysterious to me. Here, in this alien world with ancient monuments and alien technologies that are both hostile and unknowable. And I don't know what it is about me, but ever since I was little, vast empty landscapes have always set my mind ablaze. So the huge empty vistas of Beast Wars Season 1 really amplified my sense of wonderment at the show. Like, if you just walked off far enough into the empty distance, you'd run across some monolith of great and terrible power. More than most series, Beast Wars manages to encapsulate that feeling. And with it being episodic, you can have entries like that, where some horrible alien entity comes to wipe out both sides, or an episode about how Optimus is infected with the Berserker disease and is going around wiping out Predacons. And the stasis pods allow for the introduction of new and interesting characters throughout this series. Sure, we never get as many as we may want, but the characters we do get in the show are all distinct and wonderful to watch. And when the plot finally does get into gear with Beast Wars, it manages to be some of the most engaging television you can expect, with everything they ever established coming into play. In early episodes, Tarantulas is trying to steal a stasis pod for his own secretive reasons, and by the end of the season, not only are those reasons revealed, but his plans are co-opted by multiple other groups and twisted to meet their very different ends than what Tarantulas initially intended, as it plays out in a game of 4D chess between everyone involved. Oh, and how can I not mention the music? Beast Wars easily has the best opening theme of any Transformers series ever with that kick-ass guitar. But it also has an eclectic and wonderful mix of tribal music, ambiance, pan flutes, and just flat-out hard-hitting rock to back up all the scenes in the show. When the series wants to be mysterious, it's mysterious. And when it wants to be cool, it rocks. And when it wants to be creepy, it can put a chill up your back. It is so much better than that god-awful trash from Beast Machines, where they had like a grand total of 3 tracks, and they just played them back-to-back ad nauseum until you wanted to claw your ears off. And I'm someone who actually likes techno. Look, the whole show is so good that I could just gush and gush and gush about it. But I feel like I've rambled in circles for a while now. I really wish I had a more defined formula that I could use here, something that could give a little structure to what I'm doing, so maybe I'll re-review Beast Wars at some point when I get a better grasp on how to review a show, but it's been over a year since the last time I did this. In summation, Beast Wars is a much better looking show than most people give it credit for, because people have a need to try and distance themselves from stuff that they like when it's old. It's an exceptionally well-written show, with endearing, lovable, complex characters whose interactions and banter are the stuff of legend. Its episodic nature allows for a much wider set of character explorations than is afforded by, shall we say, more focused series, and it lets you just see a bunch of interesting scenarios play out. But when the plot is actually going down a consistent path in Beast Wars, it's all masterfully crafted without wasted scenes or information that will leave you on the edge of your seats. The only bad stuff about the show is the fact that it was made in the 90s, and how the characters talk can sometimes really drive that point home from time to time. And the fact that the characters take relatively inconsistent amounts of damage, plus every now and then they decide to go full Looney Tunes. So at times you are left wondering why that attack killed this dude, but only inconvenienced Waspinator. If this show was remade today, I just ask that they make the injuries a little more consistent. But outside of those, which I would describe as minor flaws, this is in my humble assessment the best Transformers show ever made. Which is different than my opinion. My opinion is that I love it beyond all reason. I can't be wrong about my opinion. However, I could be wrong about my assessment. There are arguments to be made for the other shows for sure, but Beast Wars is the best written, most successfully dramatic, most deeply characterized, highest effort series in the franchise. You can argue that Prime looks better, but I can tell you as an animator myself, that was medium effort CGI at best, that came out long after CGI became the cheapest way to animate a show. During Beast Wars, it was the most expensive way to do it. They put everything they had into Beast Wars, and if you give it a chance, the only person I've ever seen to come away still not liking it is Bobby Skullface. Everyone I've ever introduced it to, which is everyone I can, has thanked me for convincing them to actually go through with watching it. Because even when it didn't become their favorite Transformers series, it's only because it became their second favorite. And I can tell you that they were in the minority. For everyone else, it was their new number one. And if I've convinced you to try watching it, it's on YouTube in 4K for free. Just look it up. You won't regret it. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.